You already know how to obey. You learned it before you could speak, before you could walk, before anyone ever asked for your permission. And the most unsettling part is not that it happened. It is that it is still happening, right now, in ways you have never once stopped to question. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you is not a conspiracy. It is not a theory. It is something far more disturbing than either of those things. It is the truth about the invisible architecture around your life, the systems, the signals, the slow and patient conditioning that has shaped almost every decision you believe is yours. By the end of this, you will not be angry. You will not be afraid. You will simply be unable to look at the world the same way again. We live in an era that celebrates freedom louder than any civilization before it. Freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of thought. The word is everywhere. On political ads, on corporate slogans, on the lips of people who have never once examined whether they actually possess it. But here is what psychology has quietly understood for decades. Freedom is not the absence of control. It is the illusion of choice within a carefully designed container. And modern society has become extraordinarily good at building that container. So good, in fact, that most people spend their entire lives walking around inside it, convinced they are standing in open air. This is not about blaming anyone. This is not about pointing at shadows. This is about understanding the mechanics, because once you understand how a lock works, you hold the key. Think about the first institution that shaped you. School. Not what they taught you inside it. That is almost secondary. Think about what school itself trained your nervous system to do. You sat when a bell rang. You stood when permission was granted. You raised your hand before speaking. You moved in lines. You were evaluated, graded, ranked, sorted. You were rewarded for compliance and punished, even subtly, for disruption. Psychology suggests that institutions do not just transmit knowledge. They transmit behavior. They wire the nervous system to respond to authority as a reflex, not a choice. By the time you left school, you did not just know how to read and write. You knew how to wait, how to perform, how to seek approval, how to measure your worth against a rubric someone else designed. And you carried all of that into adulthood without ever being told it was happening. Most people never notice this. The training did not end at graduation. It simply changed its uniform. Your workplace runs on the same architecture. Different walls, different bells, but the same core instruction. Produce on command, stay within the boundaries, do not ask questions that make the structure uncomfortable. In many modern offices, you are monitored, your keystrokes logged, your screen activity tracked, your productivity measured in metrics you did not design. And research has shown that people who are watched, even by the suggestion of being watched, alter their behavior. They become more compliant, more careful, more self-censoring. This is not paranoia. This is a documented psychological phenomenon. It has a name. It is called the panopticon effect, and it means that actual surveillance is not even necessary. The mere awareness that you could be observed is enough to change what you do. Think about the last time you held back a genuine opinion at work because of who might be in the room. That hesitation, that internal edit, that small, quiet surrender. That is the system functioning exactly as designed. But this is only the beginning. Because the workplace is something you at least enter consciously. You know you are in a professional environment. You have some awareness that expectations exist. What about the spaces you enter for pleasure? What about the app you opened this morning before you even got out of bed? The psychology behind modern digital platforms is not accidental. It was engineered by some of the most sophisticated behavioral scientists on the planet, working with one singular objective. Not to inform you, not to connect you, not to entertain you, though it does all of those things as a means to an end. The objective is to capture your attention and hold it long enough that your behavior becomes predictable. Variable reward schedules, the same mechanism used in slot machines, the red notification dot, the infinite scroll that eliminates every natural stopping point, the algorithmic feed that learns what makes your pulse quicken and feeds it back to you in an escalating loop. In many cases, the content you consume was not chosen by you. It was chosen for you, based on what a system calculated would keep you engaged the longest. And here is where it gets darker. The more time you spend inside that loop, the more the algorithm learns about you. Your fears, your desires, your political instincts, your insecurities. And over time, without a single conversation, without your awareness, the content begins to quietly shape what you believe is real. Not through lies necessarily, but through emphasis, through repetition, through the slow erosion of your exposure to anything that contradicts the pattern. Your world gets smaller, and you call it personalization. Have you ever noticed how certain fears feel collective? How entire populations seem to share the same anxieties at the same time? Economic collapse, personal safety, social rejection, the sense that the world is accelerating faster than any individual can manage. Research has shown that fear is one of the most powerful mechanisms for controlling attention. A frightened mind narrows its focus. It stops asking broad questions and starts looking for immediate safety. It becomes susceptible to authority because authority offers the promise of protection. This is not sinister in isolation. Fear is a biological tool. It kept our ancestors alive. But psychology suggests that when fear is manufactured, amplified, and maintained as a chronic background state, it stops being protective and starts being paralyzing. A chronically fearful population does not question the systems around it. It clings to them. And the people who design those systems understand this. Not all of them consciously, but the incentive structures they operate within reward the amplification of anxiety, because anxiety drives engagement, and engagement drives revenue, and revenue drives the perpetuation of the whole machine. You are not a citizen in this economy. You are a resource. What if this is happening to you right now? Not in some distant, theoretical way, but in the specific texture of your daily life. The debt that keeps you working at a job that diminishes you. The social media feed that makes you feel perpetually behind, perpetually inadequate, perpetually one purchase away from the version of yourself you were told to want. The news cycle that makes the world feel so broken that any resistance seems futile. These are not accidents of modern life. In many cases, they are features. A person who is financially precarious cannot afford to be principled. A person who is emotionally exhausted cannot afford to be curious. A person who believes the world is irreparably damaged cannot afford to be hopeful. And people without principles, curiosity, or hope are extraordinarily easy to manage. Psychology suggests that learned helplessness, the state in which a person stops trying to change their circumstances because they have been conditioned to believe change is impossible, can be induced systematically, through repeated exposure to outcomes that feel beyond control, through environments that punish independent action, through the slow accumulation of evidence, curated or real, that resistance is futile. You were not born compliant. You were trained into it. And now we arrive at the darkest part. Because everything we have discussed so far, the schools, the workplaces, the platforms, the fear cycles, they all operate on the surface. They are visible if you know what to look for. But the deepest mechanism of control does not operate on your behavior. It operates on your identity. The most sophisticated systems of influence do not tell you what to do. They tell you who you are. They give you a tribe, a label, a set of values that feel deeply personal, genuinely yours, forged in your own experience. And then, through that identity, they root your behavior without ever issuing a single command. Because once you believe that a certain kind of person does a certain kind of thing, you will do that thing without being asked. You will defend it. You will shame others who deviate from it. You will experience genuine distress if you are pressured to violate it. The control becomes self-sustaining. You become the enforcer of your own compliance. And you will feel free the entire time, because the cage is not around you. It is inside you. This is the moment where most content like this would pivot into anger, into accusation, into the seductive comfort of having someone to blame. But awareness does not require an enemy. What it requires is the willingness to pause, to look at the automatic responses in your own life and ask honestly whether they belong to you, not your parents, not your culture, not the algorithm, not the institution. You. Psychology suggests that the simple act of noticing a conditioned response is the first disruption to its power, not fighting it, not rejecting it wholesale, simply seeing it. Seeing that the irritation you feel when someone challenges your worldview might be a trained reflex, not a reasoned conclusion. Seeing that the purchases you make to signal your values may have been engineered by the very system those values were meant to oppose. Seeing that the exhaustion you feel at the idea of questioning your life might itself be a product of a system that benefits from your exhaustion. Awareness is not a solution, but it is the only place a solution can begin. So here you are, at the end of something that is really a beginning. You came into this with a set of beliefs about your own autonomy, and whether those beliefs have shifted slightly or cracked open entirely, something has changed. And change, even uncomfortable change, even change that leaves you with more questions than answers, is the one thing that a system built on compliance cannot easily survive. You do not have to tear anything down. You do not have to become someone different. You simply have to start asking the questions that the structure around you was never designed to answer. Who decided this was normal? Who benefits from my silence? Whose voice is this, really, when I tell myself I cannot? Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that is where it starts.